It's interesting when we talk about hypervigilance,
Yeah,
definitely it's a trauma response
yeah.
and it can be a biological response.
Hmm.
And it's where it gets to be really confusing. A very common aspect of people who've had brain damage from toxic mold, like I did,
Hmm.
or a brain injury, like a traumatic brain injury. Uh, Dr. Mark Gordon and I talked about the correlations between PTSD, which creates hypervigilance, and
Yeah,
trauma, whether it's emotional or even spiritual trauma or physical trauma,
yeah,
that you get the same response.
yeah,
In my case, certainly I had birth trauma driving PTSD and hypervigilance.
yeah,
And later in life, when I got really seriously poisoned by toxic mold, you get this cell danger response.
yeah,
And it's something when I say I'm talking about you now in the plural, people who've been
yeah,
exposed to toxic mold, we can all find you walk into a building, it smells musty, and you just lose your mind. Like
yeah,
it's literally blood flow turns off and all these things.
yeah,
And it's interesting. That's also a trauma response, and it can be a direct poisoning response. If it's poisoning, it takes time. If it's trauma, it's to keep your body safe from the toxins, but it happens very quickly, and
yeah,
it's so irritating. And
yeah,
so the number of us walking around with something like this going on that's all tied up in environmental actual safety with
yeah.
emotional felt sense of safety, man, that's a can of gluten-free spaghetti to unravel.
It is. And the way that then the brain starts to relate to life is that the world, as a generalization, the world is dangerous. And when we're
Hmm.
looking through that, as you well know, we slide into sympathetic fight or flight.
Yep.
And it is, like cart before horse, a chicken egg, biology, emotion, whichever, it doesn't really matter. But the fundamental way that we're relating to life is that somehow I'm in potential danger. Whenever the brain perceives a potential threat, could be an argument with the wife because you came home late from the golf course. It could be the potentiality for mold in a building, in your case, whatever it is. People, when they stand up on a stage, they start to get nervous. They speak very quickly. They're sweating. These are all natural biological responses. It's okay. We're human. But what I like to help mitigate and reconcile are some of them that are just not true anymore, right? So you having a predisposition to being sensitive to mold, yeah, totally biological. I've got lots of friends who deal with that. Having a slightly different relationship to life, that the world is dangerous, which a lot of people could relate to,
Right.
if they have social anxieties. And that's not a truth. I mean, we could point out dangers all over the world, but walking around in that state doesn't behoove anybody, right? You could go your whole
Right.
life for the next 50, 60 years and not encounter real danger. You might have a couple of disagreements and maybe someone comments, nastily on your social media, but you're going to be okay, right? So
Hmm.
to be able to reconcile that, remove that for people is incredibly liberating. And why I'm so passionate about that stuff and why I align with your work so well is if you don't remove those constraints, you can't access real health anyway.
It's true. You'll go
So,
and get help and you'll sabotage it, right? I mean, how many times have
yeah.
you seen people do that over and over and over?
Yeah, I've got so many beautiful clients that I've helped, professional athletes, thousands of them. They've got more resources than anybody and they've got incredible talent. But if in here they're living in a world of constraint and fear, then they can't access the potential of our physiology because they're too often in fight or flight. They don't digest properly, as you know. So you could have your
Mhm.
own chef, you could have your own trainer, but if psychologically and emotionally you're living in a fundamental state of survival, then at best, what I tell people is you become the best version of your limited self.
That's a great quote. The best version of your limited self.
You're listening to The Human Upgrade with Dave Asprey.